Hello, everyone. My name is Srishti and I am a digital transformation consultant at Hyperbots. Today, I'm delighted to have Claudia Mejia as my guest. So, thank you so much for taking out the time, Claudia. Just a little bit about Claudia for the audience. She is the managing director at Ikigai Edge. And today, we'll be discussing on the topic strategic management of vendor relationships during cash crunches. So, let's get started. To begin with, can you help us understand what challenges do companies typically face when managing vendor relationships during cash crunch situations?
Well, what I have noticed is that when certain companies are on crunch from a financial point of view, they tend to keep those situations in house and try to manage that internally. However, you really do best when you are proactive. And if you know that you're going to be delayed with your vendors, it's better just to open the communication and be very clear of the expectations. That way you can prioritize payments and also see which vendors are able to be more flexible with your payments.
That absolutely makes sense. So that brings me to the next question. How important is open and transparent communication with vendors during financial hardships, and how can companies implement it effectively?
So, like I said, it's very important to be very proactive with communications. I have been involved both sides of the equation. I have seen that vendors are always willing to work with you as long as you provide the information and you are clear what you have in these situations. Financial crunches usually are temporarily, and when you explain those situations and how you're mitigating those situations, vendors most of the time are very willing to work with you.
And that's fair. So, can you explain how prioritizing critical vendors can help in cash conservation during cash crunches?
Well, it's very important to maintain the operations going, right? So when you have those vendors that are critical for your operations, you want to prioritize those vendors. However, you cannot neglect all the other vendors. You have to be fair with all your vendors across your portfolio. But if there are vendors that are definitely you cannot operate with them, you're gonna want to make sure that that relationship is very clear and you have some expectations of payments or maybe deferring payments, things like that to make sure that your operations stay whole.
Absolutely. And that's extremely helpful. What strategies can companies employ to negotiate flexible payment terms with vendors during cash crunches?
Well, there are different type of strategies. For example, you want to extend the payment deadlines. Maybe the terms are 30 days, and you can negotiate to go to 45 or 60 days, or even longer, depending the relationship that you have with your vendors. You can defer payments for a certain amount of time. Also, you can seek discounts, settlements. So say, well, if I pay you this amount here, would you give me a discount? Like I said, vendors usually are very willing to work with you if they know the situation and how they can be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. So it's just a matter of good communication, and that creates actually trust for longer relationships.
Understood. And that completely makes sense. How effective are partial payments or structured payment plans in maintaining these vendor relationships during financial constraints?
So these partial payments or structured payments are very important because it provides the goodwill. It shows commitment that the company wants to fulfill the obligations. So despite the situation that can be temporarily, if you can make partial payments that offer some stability to the vendors and to the long-term relationship, maintains the trust, and also it can reduce the accumulation of penalties, right? If you have in your terms that you have penalties if you don't pay, let's say, within 45 days, then you're going to accumulate penalties. Some vendors might just say, if you pay us within this time, I can extend you to 60 days. However, if you pay us within that time, I forgo the penalties. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you have a clear payment plan of how you're going to go about it.
That's extremely helpful. Can you shed some light in what ways can maintaining strong relationships and trust with vendors benefit a company during financial constraints?
Mm, so when you have a strong relationship with your vendors, they are more willing to be flexible. Obviously, that also depends on the situation of the vendor. If the situation, if the vendor is also going through a financial crunch, then those relationships can become a little strained. But it's a matter of if you can, for example, go to a partial payments, you help each other out through those situations. This type of conversation will be very important for the long-term relationship and for the stability and growth for both companies in the future.
That absolutely makes sense. So, how does leveraging technology and financial tools such as Hyperbots Payment AI Copilot assist in managing vendor relationships during cash crunches?
A copilot like Hyperbots, it will be able to automate the tracking of the payments, and it will provide insights of the better or the optimal payment schedules. So when you have those type of insights real times to optimize your cash flow, that is basically very insightful, very great to have. I will say that helping identify the risk or having delays or something, knowing it before time, then you'll be able to proactively have a plan going forward. So that's the beauty of these tools. These tools can give you insights that you probably be a little bit late to react. Here you have the recommendations earlier in time to put on more thoughtful action plans to communicate and to put together with your vendors. So it's about supporting strategic decision making during any financial constraints that you may have.
That is extremely helpful, Claudia. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. And with that, we come to an end for today's discussion. So, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your inputs here. Also, big thanks to our viewers. I will see you around. Goodbye and have a very good day.